There are wounds too silent to scream. Wounds that bleed not on the surface of the skin, but deep within the unseen fabric of a soul quietly unraveling. You know them well. They are the nights you stared at the ceiling with eyes full of questions and a heart heavy with betrayal. The moments you whispered prayers with trembling lips, not for answers, but for enough strength to get through the next breath. You were hurt, deeply, deliberately, and with the kind of cruelty that leaves no visible scars, but inflicts the deepest pain. They walked away, didn't they? When you were most in need of a hand to hold, when your knees buckled beneath the weight of everything you never said aloud, they left. And in their leaving, they thought they ended you. They mistook your silence for surrender. They mistook your collapse as the final chapter. They believed the fall would be the end of you. But what they did not see, what they could not comprehend, is that your fall was not a failure. It was a holy unraveling. You see, God does not waste pain. Never. He gathers every broken piece with divine precision. The fall that humiliated you, the abandonment that mocked your worth, the betrayal that ripped through your innocence, none of it escaped his notice. In fact, it is in those very ashes, in the dust of your undoing, that he begins his finest work. People imagine that God moves most in glory, that he builds with triumph and strength, but more often God chooses the ruins. He builds from dust, speaks into the void, and breathes life into that which everyone else has already declared dead. He allowed the fall not to punish you, but to position you. For what you could not build with the hands of your own effort, he intends to raise with the breath of his mercy. When you were strong, you relied on yourself. When you were surrounded, you leaned on people. But when you were abandoned, God had your full attention. The floor of your collapse became the altar of your encounter. And there, when the silence grew deafening and you were finally alone with him, you began to understand what they could never teach you. How to rise not with vengeance, but with vision. There is a sacredness in falling apart that only those who have truly shattered will understand. It forces you to face the truth about who stayed and who fled. It exposes the hollowness of shallow loyalty and reveals the sacred depth of divine love. And most importantly, it reveals who you are when no one else is clapping, when no voice affirms you, when no hand reaches back. It is in that wilderness, raw, real, and unfiltered, that your roots grow deep and your faith becomes fierce. Those who caused your pain may sleep well now, thinking your story ended when they walked away. But they don't know that they handed you over to the one who writes resurrection stories. They handed you over to the very process that would refine your purpose. In stripping you of everything you thought you needed, they unknowingly made room for everything you truly did. God is not interested in shallow healing. He doesn't apply bandages to deep fractures. He allows the breaking to go deep so that the mending may go deeper still. He doesn't rebuild you into who you were. He reshapes you into who you are always meant to become. This is not the end. This is not your ruin. This is your holy deconstruction. You are not being buried, you are being planted. And what the enemy meant to break you, God will use to build you higher than you ever dared to imagine. So let the pain speak, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Let it teach you, not what they did, but what God is doing. Because your rise is not dependent on their approval, their presence, or their apology. Your rise depends on the one who never left when all others did, on the one who remained when you were reduced to fragments, on the one who whispers, "I am not done, watch what I do with this." You may not yet see it, you may still be surrounded by rubble, but know this, The one who shaped the stars also shapes your story. And he does not write in straight lines. He writes in spirals, through storms, across deserts, and always toward redemption. Your rise has already begun, not in the noise of applause, but in the silence of your surrender. There is something profoundly divine about being broken in a way that no one can see. The kind of pain that doesn't call attention to itself, doesn't parade itself in the streets, but lives in the quiet corners of your daily life, transforming you slowly, invisibly but completely. This is not weakness. This is not defeat. This is God working in silence far beneath the surface of your understanding. When the pain first came, it shook you. It called everything you believed into question. You asked why. You wept. You doubted. You blamed yourself. And in that sacred wrestling, something happened. Your faith stopped being an inherited ritual and started becoming a living flame. Your conversations with God started being formal and started becoming real. There, in the ache, you found authenticity. You see, God is not looking for polished prayers. He is not moved by rehearsed declarations. He is drawn to the raw, the honest, the real, the whisper that says, God, I don't understand, but I'm still here. That, to him, is the beginning of greatness. They may have mistaken your collapse as the end of you, but your collapse has brought you face to face with eternity. What you thought would destroy you is doing something altogether different. It is reintroducing you to the you that was buried beneath expectations, compromises, and the approval of those who never truly saw you. It is calling forth your soul to stand naked before God and say, "Make me new." And he is. He's building something inside you that no one can see yet. Strength born from sorrow, wisdom born from weeping, compassion born from rejection, a voice born from silence. And when it is time, when the season is right, you will emerge not as a victim of betrayal, but as a vessel of glory. You will not recognize yourself, and neither will those who tried to break you. This is the irony of divine restoration. It happens so deeply, so quietly, that by the time people see it, it's already complete. God does not rebuild with human applause. He rebuilds in wildernesses, in caves, in quiet places where the only audience is heaven. And that's exactly where he has you now, not because you've been forgotten, but because you've been chosen for a different kind of rise. There is a myth in this world that says rising must be public, must be celebrated, must be visible. But not with God. His greatest works are done in obscurity. The seed grows in the dark, the roots deepen where no eye can see. The soul matures in solitude. And then, suddenly, there's bloom, a burst of glory that cannot be explained by talent or timing. A rise that makes people ask, where did this come from? It came from pain, from nights no one saw, from prayers no one heard, from battles you fought with tears on your face and hope hanging by a thread. It came from that very fall they mocked, from the breaking they caused, from the silence they left you in. They thought it was your ruin, but God declared it your recreation. So don't rush this season. Don't despise your healing. Don't wish away the quiet. Because what's forming in you now is not shallow strength, it's unshakable resilience. It's the kind of strength that won't just carry you, it will carry others. God is not simply preparing a victory for you, He's preparing you to be a victory for someone else. The people who left you thought they could escape responsibility by removing their presence, but their absence was the very tool God used to amplify His presence. And now, In their silence, God speaks louder. In their rejection, He loves deeper. In their abandonment, He draws closer. And so, with every passing day, something sacred rises within you. It is slow, yes. It is painful, often, but it is sure. And when it comes to pass, you will not look back in bitterness. You will not rise to prove them wrong. You will rise to prove God right. For the God who allowed your fall is the same God who ordained your rise, and He does nothing halfway. There comes a moment, often quiet and unnoticed by the world, when you begin to realize that the people who hurt you were not powerful, they were purposeful. Not by their own intention, but by divine allowance. For it is one of life's great paradoxes that pain, when placed in the hands of God, becomes a sculptor. It chips away the unnecessary, polishes the rough, and reveals a beauty that could never have emerged from ease alone. You, dear soul, are being carved into something eternal. They wanted to break you. They didn't say it with words, they said it with absence, with indifference, with the cold blade of silence when your heart was bleeding. And as you fell, you believed, perhaps for a time, that their withdrawal was a mirror of your worth. But it never was. It was simply the setting for a divine reversal. You were not discarded. You were delivered. Delivered from illusions, from attachments that drained your light, from the lie that your value was tied to someone else's presence. In their leaving, God began your liberation. For what they failed to see was that your fall was into the arms of a God who never sleeps, never forgets, never abandons. The very collapse they caused became the collision between your despair and His destiny. You may not feel it yet, but something irreversible has begun. Grace is threading itself into the fabric of your broken places, and it is changing you. Not just externally, not in the way the world measures change, but in the sacred chambers of the soul, where pride is dethroned and purpose is born. Your rise will not be loud, but it will be undeniable. It will not beg to be seen, but it will not be hidden. It will carry within it the signature of the one who does not merely repair, but renews. And this renewal will be different from anything you've known, because it was born not in comfort, but in crucifixion, of ego, of illusion, of every false identity you once wore, just to be loved. The old you died in that fall, and that is a holy thing, because now you are rising as the person you were always meant to be, before the world told you who to become, before fear taught you to perform, before people-pleasing smothered your truth, what they did to you. God is using to deliver you from them, from it, and even from yourself. You'll look back one day and bless the pain, not because it was fair, not because it didn't leave scars, but because it did what comfort never could. It drew you close to God, not the distant idea of God, but the intimate, present one, who walks with you in the valley, who whispers in the dark, who sits beside you in the ashes until the fire turns to light. And make no mistake, that light is coming. There is a resurrection built into the architecture of your suffering. You may not have seen the blueprint, but God has never left the drafting table. Every tear was ink, every cry was a coordinate, every lonely morning was a mark on the map. And now, slowly but surely, the design is revealing itself. You are becoming whole, not in spite of what they did, but strangely through it. For what man intended to destroy, God intends to use. You are not their victim. You are His vessel. And every time you choose to get up, to trust again, to believe again, to breathe in the promise of tomorrow, heaven smiles. Because faith that rises after betrayal is not ordinary faith. It is rare. It is precious. It is forged in fire. and that kind of faith carries authority. You are being prepared not just for personal healing, but for holy purpose. You will speak from the place you were broken. You will comfort with the wisdom earned through weeping. You will guide others, not as one who read about pain, but as one who walked through it, hand in hand with the divine. And when that day comes, you will know why the fall was necessary. The most astonishing thing about God's redemption is not just that He rebuilds what was broken, but that He does it in such a way that the cracks become a testimony, not a flaw. You will not be restored to who you were. You will become something altogether new, something stronger, something softer, something so clearly touched by heaven that no one can deny the hand that shaped you. You see, there is an invisible altar rising in your soul, and on it, God is laying down every disappointment, every betrayal, every tear you cried when no one was watching. The world may think you are still falling, still forgotten, but they are wrong. You are in the holy hush before resurrection. The world measures time in days and years, but God measures in seasons, and yours is shifting. There is a divine logic to your wilderness. It strips away the noise. It silences the applause. It burns off every dependency until only one truth remains. God is enough. You never needed them to stay. You only needed Him to remain. And He did. He always does. You may not realize it, but in these silent seasons, you are learning things that cannot be taught in light. You are learning how to discern the difference between people who love the idea of you and those who love your soul. You are learning that not everyone who walks with you is walking for you. And more than anything, you are learning the sacred art of walking alone with God and calling it enough. And that, dear heart, is the foundation of your rise. Because when you can walk through the valley without bitterness, when you can stand in the ruins and still bless the name of the Lord, when you can look at those who wounded you and pray for their healing, that is when you are no longer just surviving, you are reigning. Your strength will not be in what you carry, but in what you've laid down. The world applauds accumulation, but heaven honors surrender. And you, in your fall, surrendered more than most could bear. Your expectations, your dreams, your vision of what life was supposed to look like. And though it felt like death, it was actually the door to deeper life. The resurrection that God is crafting is not only for your benefit, it's for the benefit of everyone who will come into your orbit. You won't have to convince them with arguments. They'll see it in your eyes. They'll feel it in your peace. They'll notice it in the way you carry yourself, not with pride, but with the quiet power of someone who has walked through fire and found God waiting on the other side. They may ask, "How did you survive?" And you'll smile, not because you forget the pain, but because you remember the presence that held you when everything else let go, the presence that turned your tears into oil, your ashes into anointing. You will tell them not about revenge, but about redemption, not about justice as the world defines it, but justice as heaven defines it, where healing is deeper than hate and restoration is more powerful than retaliation. This is the miracle they will never understand, that your rise did not come by fighting back, but by laying down your right to be right. That your rise was not about proving them wrong, but about proving God faithful. That you did not rise because of them, but in spite of them. And not just to any height, but to the very one God destined you for before the pain ever came. So, be still. Let the healing work. Let the silence stretch. Let the sorrow teach. For there is no wasted moment in the hands of God. Not one night of crying. Not one unanswered call, not one quiet morning where your hope seemed to fade like breath on glass. All of it is seed. And the harvest, though hidden, is on the way. The problem, you are not just rising, you are being resurrected. The most remarkable rises often begin in the dust, not with celebration, not with trumpets, but in the quiet gasp of a soul that realizes it has survived what was sent to destroy it. You have reached that point, haven't you? The moment when the ache doesn't vanish, but transformed. The moment you stop asking why they did it and start asking what God is doing through it. That, my friend, is the turning point. That is the dawn. It's not that the pain disappears, it's that the pain bows to purpose. They left you to fall apart, believing that your end was near. And to be fair, even you questioned whether you would ever be whole again. You saw yourself through their eyes for a time, defeated, discarded, done. But now, something deeper has taken root. You are starting to see yourself through the eyes of the one who never left. And he does not see a failure. He sees a foundation. God is not in a hurry. He is never rushed. What he builds to last. And that is why your rise is taking time. He is not interested in lifting you quickly. He is interested in raising you rightly. This is not a rescue mission. This is a resurrection plan. He is not returning you to who you were. He is raising you into someone no eye has seen before. Someone forged not by applause, but by adversity. Someone shaped not in the safety of shallow waters, but in the depth of storm-tossed seas. Someone whose roots have grown so deep in him that no wind of betrayal, no drought of affirmation, no storm of abandonment will ever shake them again. And when you rise, yes, when, you will not rise fragile. You will not rise bitter. You will not rise needing validation. You will rise unshakable, not because of what you have, but because of who you've become. God has been teaching you to stand without them, so he can teach you to walk with him. What a mystery it is that they tried to reduce you by removing themselves, yet in doing so they made space for a greater presence. In the vacuum they left behind, heaven filled the void. In the silence they imposed, God's voice grew clearer. In the rejection they hurled, love took deeper root. You are now becoming dangerous, not to others, but to darkness. You are learning to carry joy even when circumstances whisper despair. You are learning to show mercy to those who showed none to you. You are learning to live not from pain, but from promise. And that promise is this: your fall was never a finale. It was an invitation to rebuild from the ground up, to throw off every false label, every dependent hope, every misaligned expectation, to become someone so rooted in God's voice that all others grow faint in comparison, to walk with such clarity of calling that no betrayal, no abandonment, no desertion can delay your destiny. Because the truth is, what they took from you, they could never keep. What they shattered, they lacked the power to rebuild. But God, he's not interested in gluing you back together. He's interested in resurrecting you into something beyond imagination. And he's already begun. You feel it, don't you? That shift in your spirit, that stirring in the unseen, that unexplainable peace in places that once trembled with fear. That's not coincidence. That's evidence. Evidence that the God of all comfort, the God of all justice, the God of all restoration is not just visiting your life. He is establishing himself in it. He is writing a story where your pain will be the ink, your faith the parchment, and his grace the pen. And this story, this rise, will echo into eternity. What a sacred irony That the very moment you believed was your undoing was in fact the beginning of something too eternal, too divine to be contained in human comprehension. They hurt you, they left you, and you fell. Not gently, not gracefully, but with the kind of collapse that makes the earth beneath you feel unreliable. You shattered inwardly, piece by piece, while the world around you carried on, unaware. It was a quiet death, not of the body, but of belief, of trust, of a former self who thought certain people would always be there. And yet here you are, still breathing, still standing, albeit with trembling knees, still reaching for the light, even if with cautious fingers, because some part of you, however bruised, however small, still believes. Believes that the fall was not final, believes that this pain carries a meaning no human could frame, and that belief, however faint, is the spark God breathes on. You see, the enemy thought that when you fell, you would curse God and abandon hope. He thought you would grow bitter, shut your heart, live with folded arms and hardened eyes. But you didn't. You wept, yes. You questioned, yes. But you also waited. You remained. You held onto something invisible, something the world would call foolish, but heaven calls faith. That is why your rise cannot be stopped, because the kind of person who clings to God in the dust cannot be touched by mere man. The kind of soul who cries and still whispers, "But I trust you," has crossed into a realm of glory the world cannot recognize. You were broken open, not broken apart, and through the cracks in your soul, grace has flowed in like water through dry stone. They thought they reduced you, but in truth, they refined you. They thought they silenced you, but in truth, they gave birth to a voice so deep, so anchored in eternity, it can no longer be shaken by storms or praise. That's what the wilderness has done to you. It stripped the shallow to reveal the sacred. It took away what you leaned on so you could finally stand. And now your foundation is not built on people, not on applause, not even on self-confidence. It is built on God. And what is built on God cannot be moved. But still, you remember, don't you? The sharp sting of abandonment, the echo of a voice you thought would never go silent, the haunting sound of the door closing behind someone who said they cared. These memories do not vanish. They live in you, not as chains, but as markers. Proof of how far you've come. Reminders of who held you when no one else did. And as you look at them now, you don't hate them. You don't wish them harm. You've grown past vengeance, past the shallow comfort of "I told you so." You now see their absence as God's intervention. You now bless the distance, because what their presence confused, their absence clarified. They taught you what love is not, so God could show you what love truly is. And that is why when you rise, and you will, it will be a quiet kind of power, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that shifts rooms without speaking, the kind that listens more than it talks, the kind that forgives without needing to be asked, the kind that doesn't need the past to change to move forward in peace. You won't need to announce your healing. It will be evident in how you carry yourself, in how you look at others with softness, not suspicion, in how you smile, not because everything's perfect, but because you finally know it doesn't need to be. And here's the most miraculous part. God is not just restoring you, He's using you. He's making your rise the answer to someone else's fall. He's taking your tears and turning them into a balm. He's turning your scars into a map. because the same road that broke you is the road you'll walk others through. You'll tell them, I know what it feels like to be shattered, to be left, to fall so low you question your own reflection. But I also know the one who lifted me, and if he lifted me, he can lift you too. And that, my friend, is the purpose behind the pain. Not just to heal, but to lead. Not just to rise, but to raise. You were not abandoned, you were appointed. So now, as heaven holds its breath, the world prepares to watch, not because you have something to prove, but because God has something to reveal. Through you, not in spite of the fall, but because of it. You've walked through the valley. You've tasted the bitterness of betrayal and sat in the silence that follows the sound of closing doors. You've known what it means to cry without an audience, to grieve without explanation, to rebuild without applause. And still, you are here. Do you realize the significance of that? To be here is not simply to survive, it is to defy the expectation of collapse. To be here, breathing, listening, hoping again, means that something holy has carried you. Something beyond strength, something deeper than willpower. Grace. Grace that refused to let your fall become your finish. This is the sacred moment when everything changes, not because the pain disappears, but because the pain has served its purpose. It has shaped you. Not into a colder person, not into a harder one, but into someone who has learned to carry both sorrow and joy in the same heart. Someone who can bleed and still bless. Someone who knows that real strength is not in the absence of pain, but in rising anyway. And now God leans in. He who watched the fall in silence, who observed your breaking without interference, not because he was distant, but because he was designing, now steps forward, not as a rescuer from above, but as the builder within. He was never far. He was simply waiting for the right time to unveil what he planted while you were buried. Because that's what your fall was, not a burial, but a planting. The soil was dark, the weight was heavy, the silence was deep. But underneath, something was growing. And now, as the season shifts, the soil begins to break. You feel it, don't you? The loosening. The subtle pull of life stirring again, not loud, not sudden, but sure, steady, strong. What you thought was your grave is revealing itself to be your womb. You are rising, not with fury, but with fire, not with pride, but with power, not with revenge in your eyes, but with peace on your shoulders. Because your rise is not an act of defiance, it is an act of obedience to the one who called you before you were broken, to the one who named you before they rejected you, to the one who saw this day long before the betrayal ever came. This is not just your story. It is God's story told through you. It is the gospel made visible in the details of your pain, and it will shine. People will see you and not understand. They will wonder how you survived, how you're smiling, how you carry such peace. They will expect bitterness but encounter kindness. They will expect distance but receive warmth. And in that moment, they will see the miracle. Because you are the miracle. You are the living proof that God does not need perfect conditions to perform holy work, that He does not require loyalty from others to establish purpose in you, that He does not call the protected. He anoints the wounded, and from your life a sound will echo, not of sorrow, but of strength, not of pity, but of purpose. You will speak with authority, not because you know everything, but because you've lived through what many don't survive. You'll guide others not with lofty words, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows the terrain of pain and the path to healing. And one day you'll look back, not with regret, but with reverence, because you'll see how God used every part of the fall. Every betrayal, every abandonment, every silence. He wove it all into a masterpiece that could only have been crafted through suffering, not because God is cruel, but because glory grows best in the soil of surrender. So now you walk forward, not waiting for their apology, not longing for their return, not needing their validation. You walk forward because the one who matters most has already gone ahead of you, making crooked paths straight, turning tears into triumph and ashes into beauty. This is your season, not to explain, not to defend, not to retaliate, but to rise. Rise into your calling, to rise into your wholeness, to rise into the joy they thought they had stolen, to rise into the version of you that only God could have formed in fire. Let them wonder, let them watch. You're not who you were when they left. You're more, not less because of the fall, but more because of the grace that met you in it. The world broke you open, but God filled the cracks with light. And that light, it's not just for you. It's for the ones still falling, still breaking, still hoping for a sign that they too will rise. And now, because you've lived it, you can be that sign. You are the proof that the fall isn't the end. It's the beginning of the rise.